Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you all to this ordinary council meeting of 14th of December 2021. I'll start tonight with our acknowledgement of traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we are meeting on the lands of the Taungurung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. I'll now outline how tonight's meeting will proceed. So it is with great pleasure and relief that we're able to open the public gallery and hold this council meeting in the community conference room, subject to the COVID-19 safe work practices, including social distancing. We are also live streaming this meeting through our website, and I welcome all who are watching us remotely. If a councillor has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting, and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure that they have done so. Councillors will be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. CEO Solomon, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
No, Mayor, there are no apologies for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Disclosures of conflict of interests. Councillors, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our Governance Rule and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? I have one, but I'll just see if anyone else in the... No other councillors. So I have a conflict of interest with item 9-5-1, councillor conference and training expense request on the agenda. Councillors, the minutes of the annual statutory council meeting and the ordinary council meeting were both held on the 16th of November in 2021, and they require confirmation. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move the minutes from the previous two meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Murray?
Yes, I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No? Okay. So I'll put it to a vote. It doesn't say so. Can I have a vote on the motion, please, that the minutes from the 16th of November 2021 annual statutory meeting and the ordinary council meeting are both accepted? All those in favour, thank you. I'll declare that carried. And all those against, no. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm going to get a bit funny with this button. It's on and off again. Petitions. CEO Solomon, do we have any petitions to be tabled this evening?
Thank you, and no, Mayor, there are no petitions for this evening.
Thank you. Okay, so now's an opportunity for our councillors and delegates to put their reports to the council meeting and community. Is there any councillor that would like to make a report? Yes, Councillor Murray.
Thank you for the opportunity of making a report to council. I'd like to say it's been a busy time the last few weeks with lots of events happening and lots of meetings. And as we come out of our lockdowns and as COVID situation changes, there have been lots of people getting together around the Shire, particularly in Avenel, where I've had to go to a number of meetings of the Avenel Action Group, the Twilight Market going on, events such as Eddie Perfect they've had down there recently and so on. So lots of things are happening down there. And I'd also like to mention, by way of a report, a program which is running down at Avenel called Get Me to the Shops. Which is a program where they take people down to Seymour regularly. There have been 42 trips so far this year and an average of 10 people per trip. So that's well over 400 people trips, and many of them elderly and with some mobility issues. And it's a great service that the community is providing through the support of the Shire to many of the members down at Avenel. So keep your ears out for that great service down there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Haysbert, was your report in regards to your training? Yep. Okay.
So as part of some funding I received for training at the start of my position as a councillor, I'm required to report back on that. So I'd like to do that now. I had some coaching sessions with Ruth McGowan, who is very experienced in the government sector, having been a mayor and subsequently a coach for many CEOs, mayors and government organisational leaders. Early in my program, I was able to clarify my purpose as a councillor and understand the role and demands of a councillor while also setting goals for the community. Through the group coaching and mentorship of Ruth McGowan, I have learnt some key lessons which have supported me significantly in being professional and adapting in the leadership role of a councillor. Having never been in politics before, I was taught skills in political intelligence and strategic networking, which are a critical part of all levels of government. I now understand the importance of building positive political skills rather than negative game playing. The coaching had strong focus on good governance, which means transparency in decision making. I analysed the 2016 Victorian Ombudsman's report on this topic, and I now have an appreciation for the recommendations around topics of notices of motion, committee members, managing the risk of unforeseen influences, when to close meetings and when to not, and avoiding secrecy. Several of the recommendations were picked up in the new Local Government Act. I was given many helpful tools that assisted me in dealing with difficult matters within the community and managing complaints, while always ensuring that the community is getting the information they need. I was given guidance on how to speak publicly and engage with my constituents and fellow councillors. I'm better able to pitch my ideas with fellow councillors and think at a strategic level. I've learned how to build positive relationships with key stakeholders. Through these coaching sessions, I gained a lot of confidence to help me practice good governance, undertake due diligence in my role as councillor, make decisions for the benefit of the municipality, and work to the best of my ability for the community. I'd also just like to mention as part of my report that to reassure the community on the ARTC issue that Euroa is facing, Council's formal position is to get behind the community's preference, and that's been made loud and clear that the community's preference for the crossing is an underpass. So we look forward to working with ARTC on the next steps to achieve the community's wishes. And other than that, yes, it's been a very busy time. I concur, Councillor Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Did any other councillor wish to make a report? No? Okay, get ready, strap in for mine. So tonight I want to remind our community that even though we're nearing the end of 2021, we're still seeking your feedback on lots of projects. Draft streetscape plans are now open for feedback at the Share strathbogie.vic.gov.au, a website for the townships of Euroa, Strathbogie, Avenel and Violettown. We expect feedback to open on the draft plans for Longwood very soon. Council officers are working as quickly as they can because we understand there is so much interest in this project. We're really keen to hear your thoughts on these draft plans, which have been developed using the community feedback we gathered through our face-to-face Share Strathbogie sessions earlier in the year and also online. To view the plans and share your thoughts, head to the online engagement platform, the Share Strathbogie one. In Nagambie, we're working on the next draft of the streetscape plan to reflect the feedback we've heard from the community. Key themes are emerging with the community clearly requesting more parking, both for cars and long vehicles, and maintaining the divided road to the northbound lane. Council is listening, we welcome your feedback, and we want to make change to ensure we're meeting your needs. Pitch My Project. If you haven't already heard, we're building on the successful Pitch My Project initiative we established last year, and we're asking people to pitch their ideas now as we work to develop the 2022-2023 draft budget. We want our community to be involved in every step of the development of our draft budget because this means it reflects the projects and initiatives that matter to you. Last year, we received some incredible submissions and we were proud to be able to deliver funding to more than 10 projects through the initiative. This year, we want to do better. Launching the Pitch My Project is ensuring we have meaningful community involvement as we continue to strive to improve our community engagement. And you can access Pitch My Project at the Shire Strathbogie website as well. Summer Splash Series. A quick reminder, we're looking forward to hosting the Summer Splash Series for our region's young people, featuring healthy food, music and games at our outdoor pools. We could just say our pools because we know we have no indoor pools. The first event is in Euroa this Friday, December 17th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. The next event at Avalon Pool on January the 8th, Violet Town on January the 15th and Nagambie on January the 29th. There will be another round of series at each pool in February. Again, head to our website to find out more details. The Skate Park League. While we're on the topic of activities for the youth, the Skate Park League Northeast Skate Park Series held a competition in Nagambie on Saturday, and Euroa is hosting the event this Saturday, December 18th from 11 a.m. There's lots of activities, and again, head to our website for more information. I've heard fabulous feedback from the Nagambie one that it was a great day and a really well attended and lots of fun competition and live music by local bands. The Scout Jamboree. So sticking with our young people, we're excited to host more than 4,500 Scouts and their leaders in Nagambie over the Christmas New period for an 11-day jamboree called Vic Jam. The Scouts will be taking to Lake Nagambie to sail, paddleboard, kayak and have fun on the water. They have a giant water slide and other inflatables coming apparently. So if you see lots of young people in Nagambie on December the 30th until the 31st, they're participating in Vic Jam. The GoTAFE bus, if you haven't heard, the GoTAFE bus is in Euroa from now until Thursday. You'll find it near the Sevens on Foy Street. The bus is there to provide our community with course advice and qualified careers counselling. And finally, in this section, I wanted to wish, our community a happy and safe holiday period. I'm sure after 2 years of coronavirus pandemic, we're all looking forward to spending time with our loved ones over the festive season. Please remember to hug your families and friends a little bit tighter when you see them. It's been a challenging time, and I think we all need to be reminded that our family and friends are here to support us. So that's my council mayoral update. Councillors, I would also like to report back to the community in accordance with the council resolution from 18th of May 2021 in relation to my participation in some additional training, and that was in the mastery of business and empathy. In January of 2021, I was one of 30 people accepted into the Small Giants Academy inaugural leadership course, the Mastery of Business and Empathy, commonly referred to as the MBE. Developed in Australia in partnership with global champions across disciplines, the MBE reinvents and extends the traditional MBA. The program equips leaders with a renewed and regenerative understanding of leadership, including the tools, strategies and philosophies to successfully lead a purposeful organisation and chart a hopeful, galvanising vision for the future. The MBE is a transformative opportunity to delve into our inner lives and to learn regenerative leadership practices and to develop lifelong connections. Whilst not an accredited course, the curriculum offered, the facilitators guiding the learning, the guest faculty presenting specialised sessions and the community of fellow students and our commitment to peer-to-peer learning far exceeded all my educational expectations. At times, working outside the status quo is required to truly be able to explore bold new ideas, test theories of change, and chart a hopeful new course. The mastery of business and empathy is that space, working beyond the confines of accreditation. For the past 10 months, I've spent Thursday evenings online in the MBE virtual classroom, joined by a diverse cohort of people from fields of medicine, science, art, health, finance, energy, technology, agriculture, education, environment, law, horticulture, spirituality, social work, not-for-profit and corporate, with me flying the local government flag. The overall learning intention for the year was together we lead with strong minds, open hearts and ready hands in service of the next economy. A 3-day immersive session, the prologue, opened the year where we explored how each of us as leaders in our fields would form a community over the coming 10 months and work towards actualising our vision of the good society. We moved then into the first 5 modules, each running for 4 to 5 weeks. We began by understanding our context and how we have arrived where we are before delving into leadership and theories of change. With our minds stretching into new ways of leading, we studied decision-making and strategy, governance, and our 5th module, operations. The middle of the year provided another 3-day immersive weekend where we reflected on what we had learnt to date and how we have and continue to grow as humans with spirits, hearts, and curious minds. After this recentering and reflective interlude, we unpacked community, people and culture and got deep into the business of finance and finished the year with storytelling and communications. Of the 50 guest faculty who joined us throughout the year, I continue to circle back to the teachings of Kate Raworth, renegade economist from England, Gail Hardy, co-founder of the Global Leadership Foundation Australia, Hugh McKay, a social psychologist and author from Australia, Dr. Julia Kim, Program Director of Gross National Happiness Centre in Bhutan, Ranji Marie Price, Director, The Connective in New Zealand, Dr. Jane Goodall, DBE, founder, the Jane Goodall Institute, ethologist, UN Messenger of Peace from England, Dane O'Shaughnessy, Country Director for Patagonia in Australia, Catherine Ingham, author and president of Living Dharma from Australia, Vandava Shiva, physicist, author and philosopher and activist from India, and Satish Kumar, founder of the Shoemaker College in England. My year studying the MBE has built my confidence to lead and be of service to the municipality of Strathbogie Shire. My growth during the year, supported by the course facilitators and fellow students, was instrumental in accepting the nomination for the role of Mayor. Dr. Jane Goodall told us, what you do in your life makes a difference. You get to choose what kind of difference you wish to make. I choose to be of service to humanity and planet Earth. I choose to do so with love in my heart, a curious mind and ready hands. And I look forward to bringing my learnings to Strathbogie Shire and my year ahead as Mayor. Thank you. CEO Solomon, are there any questions this evening from the public? No, we don't. They're just...
Thank you, Mayor. There are 4 questions for tonight's meeting and I will go through those and individually as we receive them. The first question is from Peter Davies from Nagambie, who asks, the item pertaining to a request by a councillor who has exhausted their annual training allocation to be provided with additional funding. The question is, how can this be justified, or how can the requested additional expenditure of ratepayers' money be recommended or justified? In response to your question, Peter, thank you. And the Local Government Act 2020 sets a high standard for councillor knowledge and skills. It also broadens the roles and functions of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. In recognition of the growing complexity of the role, the Act requires councillors to adopt a councillor expenses policy that sets out how the administration will adequately resource councillors in successfully undertaking their roles. Part of this is ensuring that councillors are able to access learning and development opportunities. Our council expense policy aims for maximum public transparency and accountability around the reporting of councillor-related expenses. Expenses are reported to the Audit and Risk Committee and also to the community through quarterly reports and the annual report. The policy outlines a legitimate process to request additional funds over and above an annual allocation of $1,500 per councillor per annum through a council resolution made at a public meeting. Councillors are required to report back to council and the community about the learnings and the community benefit gained from the allocation of additional funds. Thank you. The second question is from Philip and Cheryl Wright from Euroa. Given that there has been a decision made on Benalla, we are wondering why no decision has been announced for Euroa. We understand community opinion is strongly in favour of an underpass, and it seems the ARTC survey has overwhelmingly confirmed this. Council has said that they will back the community voice. What does this mean, and how is Council demonstrating this? The community has waited a very long time for the opportunity to rectify the design mistakes of the past. What steps will Council take to ensure the community gets the very best rail precinct and not the cheapest and easiest option? So thank you for your questions, Philip and Cheryl. When the ARTC released 2 draft design options to replace the Anderson Street Bridge in Euroa, Council's message was clear. We asked the community to share their views, share them loudly, and share them on repeat. It is clear that this has happened. The Euroa community is strong and passionate about this issue. We all want the best solution for the Euroa Railway precinct because it has a significant impact on the town's future. Council's commitment to this project has not changed. We will continue to advocate strongly to ensure that the decision makers, that's the ARTC, the Department of Transport and ultimately the Minister, hear and listen to our community's view. We believe very strongly that the community's preference for the underpass preference should be the solution implemented by the ARTC. Thank you for your question. The third question this evening is from Mr. Doug Robinson from Violet Town, who asks, noting the Planning Minister's recent decision to revoke the planning permit issued by Council in 2020 to allow the removal of 51 large trees as part of the Allura Estate Lifestyle Village at Nagambie, and the strong community concern about the impacts of this tree clearing proposal on local biodiversity and landscape values, my question is, how does Council propose to respond to the community concerns about the ongoing tree clearing at this location and other sites and develop a more inclusive and proactive planning approach to protecting these important natural assets across the Shire? So thank you to your questions, Doug, and in response. Council officers will continue to work with planning permit applications, the Department of the Environment, Water, Land and Planning, as the community to ensure that the removal of native vegetation can be avoided wherever possible in all new developments. Officers work closely with the applicants prior to their submission of a planning permit to ensure that designs can be modified wherever possible to prevent any native vegetation removal. Officers work with the developers to explore opportunities to highlight the value of the vegetation within the new open spaces areas within the municipality and within the existing landscape. Where native vegetation cannot be avoided for removal, officers ensure that any removal is to the minimum extent necessary and that appropriate offsets for native vegetation removal are provided. And thank you, Doug. And the final question for this evening is from Mr. Tom Ma, who is from Violet Town also, who is in the gallery. Tom has asked 2 questions. The first one is about the page 4 Euroa Gazette December the 8th. The blue column, which is community information, is hard to read. The jobs and tenders are advertised in other papers in black and white, authorised by the CEO. And I'll answer these individually. Thank you for your question, Tom. In answer to your that question, our community column is part of our commitment to improving our communications and engagement. We have made the move to a weekly column in the Euroa Gazette rather than public notices because we want to provide a one-stop shop for our community to seek their information. It's on the same page every week and all the information is in one place. Our goal is to make it easy as possible for our community to gather council news and information. The advert appears in the same format in the Nagambie Community Voice on a fortnightly basis. We're using these publications as they are the newspapers situated most broadly within our municipality. Adverts for tenders and jobs do often appear in other newspapers such as the Shepparton News, Seymour Telegraph and The Age. This is because we don't have a regular column in these publications outside our Shire boundaries. In the lead up to Christmas, we are trying to squeeze as much information as possible into this column. However, we take on your feedback and on readability, and we will investigate ways to make this clearer. So thank you for that question, Tom. The second question also relates to the Euroa Anderson Street Bridge ARTC. And the question is, why not look at a third option? I ask for time to explain to Council at another time. So, Tom, in relation to your second question, I understand that you're not seeking an answer to this now, but I ask you please to raise this with the ARTC, who is the manager of this project. The two viable options that ARTC consulted with the community on were based on the feedback that they had heard from the community. So thank you, Tom, for your questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO Solomon, and thank you to the community for taking the time to ask questions. It's a really important way to have your voices heard in our council meeting public forum manner. Okay, so we will move on to page 1 of the agenda. And we have the planning item 9.1.1, planning permit application number P2019-106, use and development of land for a residential village, creation of easements and reserves, and the removal of native vegetation at 40 Brock Street, Euroa. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The proposal is for the use and development of a residential village at 40 Brock Street in Euroa. The application was advertised initially and there were 8 objections received. A subsequent revision of the proposal was re-advertised, and following that re-advertisement, there were 3 objections withdrawn, leaving 5 objections outstanding. The application hasn't been assessed within the 60-day statutory timeframe due to a number of matters, including objections that required further assessment and further information from referral authorities. The revised proposal meets the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the general residential zone Schedule 1 and the land subject to inundation overlay. It is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor Binks even.
That's okay, Director Tingay. Thank you. Okay, so councillors, we do have 2 submitters, I believe. Therese, I can see you're in the room with us, and there's also possibly a Robert Kelsall. Can you just check if Robert's in now for you? Thank you, Dawn. The submitters will be called forward in turn, and each will have 5 minutes to speak. Councillors may ask questions of clarification of the speakers at the end of their submission, but there must be no debate. So you're only No. Okay. Thank you. You're only permitted to ask clarifying questions. It's not an opportunity to debate the matter in front of us. So, as Robert is not with us tonight, Teresa Anderson, would you like to come forward and make your submission, please?
Thank you and good evening. My question's really, or my Okay, a little hiccup there. Thank you. So my concerns were to do really with parking and also to do with footpaths. But I noted the developers' responses in the agenda documents, and I have some questions about, what is a residential village? It may well be in the fine print of some of these things. Is it a freehold, a leasehold? Is it an owner's corporation? To me, it's not actually clear from the plans and the discussion about that, what it actually entails, because I think that impacts dramatically on the type of occupancy that they will be looking for. And, of course, development is more than just planning. It has social impacts as well. So in response to my objection re reduced parking, the developer stated that it was envisaged that most residents will have one or no vehicles. However, all the units on the latest plan from the 16th of August have 2 or more bedrooms, and thus units may have multiple occupants at any time. So where will these visitors park? I know there's some limited additional parking on site, and the overflow of vehicles to surrounding streets is of concern. I also note that the developers say that there's little information on the demographic range of residents who will be residing there. So a lot of this is actually unknown. So if, for instance, they say it's not a retirement village, it's a residential village, but if some of these residents may have mobility issues, like a lot of electric scooters. There are currently very limited or no footpaths in most of that end of Brock Street. And the street is usually very busy with foot traffic in the mornings and afternoons due to the proximity of the Euroa Secondary College. So since living here almost 3 years, I've noticed a big increase in vehicular traffic along Brock Street, including heavy trucks. And I'm not aware of any recent traffic monitoring that has been undertaken. And another example, perhaps, is that older residents in general often have really complex healthcare needs. So, there's a potential for a lot of emergency vehicles to arrive at all hours of the night and day, and that may increase lead to increased traffic and noise. And additionally, if they're going to have workers such as home help and personal care attendants, will the parking be sufficient for them to attend to their clients' needs? And I just want to stress that a lot of this isn't unknown. You can never predict what it might look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. Did any councillors have clarifying questions of Therese? No? Okay. Thank you for submission, Therese. So as Therese was our only submitter on that one, that's all the submitters we have for this item tonight. Councillors, are there any questions to the director before I get a motion? Any clarifying? No?
Yes. Can we ask if the director knows about the freehold of the properties?
Through you, Mayor. No, I don't. So I'd have to take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 1 of the agenda with a few additional conditions on the permit application. The permit conditions, sorry. Should I state those now?
Yes, if you could state those now, and then we'll see if we have a seconder for your motion with amended conditions. Thank you, Councillor Haysberg.
Could I please add the following conditions? Provision of stormwater retention tanks within the development to allow capture and reuse of stormwater. Provision for a footpath along Brock Street frontage and of the land and to link to the existing Brock Street footpath network to be constructed in accordance with infrastructure design manual standards. And I request that officers undertake discussions with the applicant regarding the potential to incorporate environmentally sustainable design techniques, including but not limited to colour schemes, recycled materials and rooftop solar.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Horrigan, thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? Okay, so Councillor Haysberg, you could, if you'd like to speak to the motion initially, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Therese for coming and speaking about her concerns. You speak on behalf of a few residents. My reason for making those additional conditions is that I believe that the local government states that council in making decisions must be responsible for the economic, social and environmental sustainability of the municipal district, including mitigation and planning for climate change risks. The fact that this council has declared a climate emergency is actually beside the point, when in fact the Act which governs us states that dealing with climate change is one of the overarching governance principles, and it would be remiss of council not to act when it has a chance, especially when development has a massive impact on climate change and it can be done in more sustainable ways. As councillors, we are required to serve our community who deserves better from new developers. Council has a commitment to active transport as we move to becoming a more sustainable community. And this development is so close to the commercial centre of town, I think it would be a real loss not to provide residents with a footpath that takes them into town. It will benefit residents and it will make the development more appealing. I'm supportive of this type of infill development. We do need it in town. There's a huge demand for properties in our region, and I'm grateful to the developer for working around native vegetation and maintaining significant trees on site. I believe that these additional conditions are the bare minimum that our community should expect from developers.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I concur with Haysberg's comments as well, which is really good, and I am supportive of the extras that you put in there. So I thought that was really good. I think this in particular residential village contributes positively to our housing affordability crisis. And in terms of housing affordability, the significant impact in the cost of housing is that many people are now unable to afford a home. Housing affordability is an issue we're facing in this country, and it is an issue that concerns me greatly. According to the Habitat for Humanity, over 116,000 people are homeless every night. There's a severe lack of access to appropriate and affordable housing in Australia, and particularly in Victoria, making it incredibly difficult for low-income families to find decent, secure accommodation. They've also detailed many points of what Victoria is facing in regards to the housing crisis. Without reading the whole report, 2 points stood out to me in particular, which was women over 55 years are the fastest growing group experiencing homelessness. And there is a chronic shortage of affordable private housing properties. Few are dedicated to helping residents out of social housing and into their own home. So this particular application, I believe, will contribute positively within the housing affordability and the above issues, whilst also ensuring that the good design and environmental principles are taken into account, which I believe this application has. I'm of the opinion that this application is the right step forward in regards to housing affordability, and it is an appropriate location. It is close to town and to public transport. The conditions that the officers have included, and Sally now, sorry, have included, I believe, ensure the good design environmental principles were met. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, so do you want to exercise your right of reply?
I think just to allay some concerns maybe of objectors, I think officers have worked really hard to ensure that parking won't be an issue. I know we can never read the future, but that all residents have at least 2 parking spots available and there is additional parking within the site. And yeah, I agree with Christy's points about housing affordability. It's really important that we strive towards these types of developments.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Okay, so councillors, I'll now put the motion to the vote. So it is the motion on page 1 plus Councillor Hourigan's 3 additional. Sorry, Councillor Haysberg, wrong councillor. Additional points which she will circulate to officers. Yes, to be included. And councillors, can I get an indication, all those in favour of the motion? Okay, and any against? No, and I declare that carried. Thank you, Teresa, for coming to the meeting tonight, and I hope that the extra provisions that have been added to the conditions of the report help to alleviate some of your concerns. You're welcome to, I think you're welcome to continue staying. I think we've got enough space in here. Yes, we do. If you would like to remain, you're welcome to remain, or you can leave. It's your choice. But we are okay numbers wise. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move on to item 9.1.2, planning permit application number P 2021-068, native vegetation removal, Mullers Road, stages 1 and 2. Director Tingay, are we able to have a summary, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The proposal is to remove native vegetation to the minimum extent to allow for the widening and upgrade of Mullers Road in 2 stages. Mullers Road provides a regular route for a number of vehicle types, including trucks transversing from nearby wineries. It is proposed that 22 trees be removed. The application was advertised and 4 objections were received. The objections have been considered and do raise a number of valid planning concerns, to which responses have been given in the officer's report and in the delegate report summary. The application has not been assessed within the 60-day timeframe due to the need to work with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to ensure that the amount of vegetation to be removed was the minimum extent necessary for the required road safety upgrades. The proposal meets the objectives of the Planning Policy Framework, Local Planning Policy Framework and the particular provisions relating to native vegetation in the Strathbogie planning scheme. There is a recommendation for Council's consideration on page 55. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? Okay, I'll maybe ask again later. Sorry, I'm just getting a list here. We have 4 submitters wishing to speak to the item tonight. Submitters, you will be called forward and in turn, and each have 5 minutes to speak. Councillors, you may ask questions of clarification of the speakers at the end of their submissions, but there is no debate. Our first speakers tonight are Donna and James Winter Irving. Can you please come forward and make your submission?
I won't sing, I promise. We'll start again. Hello to everyone, and I'm Donna Winter-Irving from Nagambie, a regenerative, ecological land steward and a strong advocate for Mother Nature and all ecosystems. Thank you to all councillors and staff for leading our community and assisting us with our concerns, especially, and I'm not sure, Gillian, who's been very helpful, haven't met yet. Thank you for inviting me to speak to the planning permit about the native vegetation removal. Prior to 2015, road safety projects managed by Vic Roads saw minimal community consultation. Trees were seen as hazards to be plucked so that standard road widening could take place. Since 2015, due to community uprising in the midst of their Towards Zero campaign, Vic Roads, now Regional Roads Victoria, have been working on a new policy and process for providing a safer road network without compromising roadside vegetation. For example, designing wider roads, installing safety hardware and avoiding tree removal. They've also greatly improved their community engagement processes. Local knowledge has been paramount to upgrading and designing new roads. It also means that rare habitat, remnants and biolinks throughout the landscape have been considered without compromising safety. One recent example, and I've had support from Louise Costa, recent example of this approach can be seen on the Midland Highway east of Shepparton, where approximately 13 kilometres stretch of road has been upgraded in stage 1 of works. Estimates showed 250 trees would be removed from this project for this project. Regional Roads came to the community with a reduced number of trees from their initial design. They had already identified ways to minimise the loss prior to engaging. There was an intent to reduce loss, but after a series of changes to the design through community collaboration, only one tree was ultimately removed. This has resulted in a safer road that has also retained its cultural and landscape identity and environmental value. The process of design ensured that each tree was assessed individually and a solution for its retention was resolved. In some cases, this meant that the road alignment was slightly altered or safety hardware was utilised. AMCO guardrails and wire rope barriers to address different accident deflection widths. The important part of this precedent is that the project managers and designers were committed to finding clever solutions rather than clear the slate and start again. It is possible to circumnavigate these ancient sentinels of natural history, just as it would be possible to avoid bulldozing and historic roadside building. 7 trees are potentially 200 years old, including a majestic grey box over 380 years and a yellow box potentially 250 years and 4 over 100 years. I'm asking that the permit not be granted until an on-site visit with a local community deputation has taken place to provide an opportunity to address and recognise the significance, our local knowledge of our unique flora and fauna. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. James, are you? Yep. Thank you.
We don't have 5 minutes each, do we? I'm James Winter-Irving and I live 2 kilometres from Mullers Road, so I know it quite well. And it's a road I quite often ride down, so it's a push bike ride and it's got some lovely trees, shade and shelter. But it's also got a magpie up one end that sweeps me every night, or most nights. The council has announced a climate emergency. Now, to reverse the climate change, we need trees. We must get the carbon from the atmosphere back into the soil, and trees are a good way of doing that, sequestering carbon back into the soil. That's their function, as well as other things with shade and shelter and biodiversity and birds and all those other good things, but that is a key role that they do play. These trees could also potentially become an income for the Shire. In the future, the carbon market is evolving. It's only in its early stage, but it's something that could happen in years to come, maybe in the next couple of years, that the trees, we could actually be getting an income from them. The trees are referred to as standing carbon, and at the moment you've got to plant trees and wait 25 years for them to get a benefit, but maybe these 200- and 300-year-old trees are something that in future we actually could be getting some sort of monetary refund for. And if you add up all the roads that the Shire has got, you could punch some numbers in there, you get a lot of trees and a lot of roadside. Now, a solution to this, these are the ones I've just touched on, is that a speed limit, we can do that. We drove through the town for quite a bit of last summer at 20 kilometres an hour, so it is a bit of a touchy one, but reducing the speed on the road is possible, and guardrails, which Donna's mentioned, and different sorts of barriers to protect trees is achievable. And I'll mention again, the 250 trees on the Midland Highway, and to reduce that down to one is a significant achievement. So just in closing, I just like to defer this decision with some further consultation with the community, and especially with someone like Lou Costa, who's got a lot of experience in this. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Councillors, did you have any clarifying questions for either Donna or James? No? Okay. Our next submitter is Deborah Dudley. Can you please come forward and make your submission, Deborah?
Good evening. Ngambia is expanding rapidly, and I do understand that as part of the community we need to embrace and grow with this change. However, I feel that change needs to work around the heritage of the town, including the old back roads, not to be cleared into a boring, straight and hot highway type road. The old back roads, including Muller's Road, needs to be respected and traffic work in with what is already there, the trees. The very natural assets that makes people want to live here and tourists love to visit. Trees, fresh air, animals and bird life. For travellers to see when they look outside their car windows on their way to visiting the wineries, via the back road, or for workers to the horse studs. The kids to view from the school bus on the way to Rushworth as they have done for years. They get in the way of the trucks, I hear you say. Well, remove some limbs, not the whole tree. Reduce the speed limit. For goodness sakes, we live in one of the most beautiful towns in the state. People are moving here in droves. Why? We have a beautiful lake, beautiful surrounds, a forest in the town, and back roads lined with iconic grey box, yellow box, gums and the majestic peppercorns, all providing home, shade and beauty. When councillors declared the climate emergency earlier this year, you were informing us that an emergency exists. We all know it, see it and feel it. So do the animals, bird life and insects. The whole ecosystem, including humans. Ngambia, positioned on the top of the list for the least tree coverage in the Shire. I'm not sure how removing 22 trees from Muller's Road works in with the climate declaration. Access to wineries is already available for visitors and staff via O'Dwyer's Road and Mitchelton Road. Muller's Road is not the only option for entry. The 22 trees along Muller's Road can be kept and incorporated into a clever design which would be safe, homes for wildlife kept, all while maintaining the beauty of the old back road. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillors, are there any clarifying questions for Deborah? No? Okay. So our next and I believe final submitter is Jacqueline Palmer. Would you like to come forward and make your submission, Jacqueline?
Just make this up. My name is Jacqueline Palmer. I live in Tibilk and Ngambia is my local town centre. If the approach to creating safer roads in the Shire always starts with the age-old premise that the Shire needs to remove native vegetation to make this road safer, then this is the only outcome that will ever be achieved. Now is the time for a new paradigm, a new approach that reads, in order to protect the native vegetation while making this road safer, the Shire, Vic Roads and the state government will work together, applying 21st century road engineering practices and modern design principles to achieve this. In the Ngambie Growth Management Strategy 2020, there is no mention of the need to undertake a 5.11 kilometre upgrade of Muller's Road. The recent planning application states that the upgrade is proposed to facilitate a safer road for the growing tourism industry, the increasing volume of commercial vehicle traffic and the need for a detour road in the event of an incident on the Old Golden Valley Highway. This recommendation is based on the Austroads Guide to Road Safety, Part 6A, implementing road safety audits, combined with the use of offsets to compensate for the loss of native vegetation. Councillors by now have a full and clear knowledge of what the Ngambie community expect of them regarding the protection of native vegetation in the face of ongoing development. In 2021, planning decisions such as this should be made by having environmental considerations, not road infrastructure guidelines, as the primary driver for a solution. It's the only acceptable approach given we face a climate emergency. Why has there been no alternative assessment or proposal that re-engineers the road, protecting native vegetation and reducing the speed limit to 80 kilometres an hour? At the current speed limit of 100 kilometres an hour, it takes 3 minutes and 3 seconds to drive this distance. At 80 kilometres an hour, the same distance is driven in 3 minutes and 49 seconds, a differential of 46 seconds. Less than the time it takes to boil the kettle or go to the bathroom. Less than the time it will take for councillors to vote on this application tonight, 46 seconds. The age of some of these trees is estimated to be over 200 years. If the average age of each of these trees is conservatively estimated to be 75 years, then the total combined age life of these 22 trees is 2,365,200,000 seconds. 2.365 billion seconds of native vegetation traded for a faster driving time of 46 seconds. It is not acceptable to be told that working with Vic Roads and the state government to achieve this speed reduction is too hard and will take too long. If this road in this Shire is characterised as being too difficult to protect, there must be dozens of similar roads in the Shire and hundreds of similar roads across Victoria that are also characterised in the same way. Now is the time for the Shire to demand that Vic Roads and the state government come to the table to create a 2021 solution. Signage that declares speed limit reduced to 80 kilometres an hour to protect native vegetation, compared to the current proposal, 22 native trees removed to widen this road, will be a powerful message to everyone who travels along this road that the Shire no longer takes the easy way out, that it reflects the concerns of the community and is now placing the environment at the centre of its planning efforts. I implore you to champion the community's environmental values and to deny this application, sending it back to the planning department with instructions to find a solution that starts with the commitment to protect all native vegetation, rather than a solution that is predicated on the need to travel this road 46 seconds faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Amanda. That's all the submissions we have tonight on the item. Councillors, are there any clarifying questions you would like to ask Director Tingay on this matter? No? I would like to. Director Tingay, my understanding of this road upgrade and the work that council officers have done is that there has been there was an initial proposal done some years ago which proposed 100 trees to be removed, and then working with biodiversity officers and council planning and perhaps some other people who I'm not aware of, that number was reduced down to the 21 trees which are before us tonight, 13 of which have been identified as the large trees and the rest being identified as scattered trees and patches. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, that is my understanding. And in addition, a number of safety barriers to be included to retain trees as well have been incorporated into the design.
Thank you, Director Tingay. So, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Yes, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I move that the recommendation on page 55 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Okay, I don't appear to have a seconder for the motion. Councillor Rayburn?
Can I move a deferment on this issue to go out to talk to the community further on this issue and come back at a later date to the council?
If we can get someone to second your deferral.
Would you support that date, Councillor?
So hang on.
So through you, Mayor. So we didn't have a seconder for the first motion, so we just needed to clarify that was lost for want of a seconder, and so the Mayor will now call for another motion that anyone can.
Thank you, Governance Guru Gray. So I will confirm that the motion is lost as we did not get a seconder to the motion. Sorry? Lapsed.
It's lapsed.
Sorry?
Yes.
Lapsed. The motion is lapsed because we did not get a seconder to the motion. So as the motion that appears before us in the paper is lapsed, can I have an alternate motion? Councillor Rayburn, you may now state your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, Mayor, I'd like to move that Council go out and have further consultation with the community on the issue of Mullers Road through Shire, Strathbogie and other ways in Nagambie to come back with a further report in the new year.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder to Councillor Rayburn's motion? Councillor Hourigan. Okay, so the new motion on the table, is there any opposition to the new motion on the table? No? Okay, Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just that after listening tonight to the people in the gallery on their reservation on what we're doing in Mullers Road, I think it's a great opportunity for Council to liaise with our community once again to ensure that we get the right outcome for everybody. So that's the reason why.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. And sorry, Mayor Rayburn. Wow, I'm re-promoting you. Councillor Rayburn. It's hard to give it up. It's hard to take it up. No, it's not. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Apologies for my error. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I think it's really important that the objectors actually did come in and talk tonight, because there were quite a number of councillors that were sitting on the fence, and as you just saw from the result, how all the objectors spoke tonight was really good, and it changed a lot of decision, and so therefore I do also support that we defer so that we can go back out to community consultation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yes, Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what's been said and thank those people who've made submissions today. There's lots of passionate people there, and it's terrific to hear you all, and for you to put that much effort and to come over here and to to speak your mind about what you think should be happening in this regard. I support many of these views, and I think it is important that we listen to our community and defer this motion so that we can go out and have a look and talk to you and maybe get some more feedback on what's possible out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Did you want to write a reply, Councillor Rayburn? No? Okay, cool. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, can I please see a show of hands? Okay. And against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you. Sorry, just making my notes here. I leave that on. Okay, so objectors, thank you for taking the time to come in and speak to council this evening. It's a great opportunity for us to hear directly from people their concerns on some really important decisions that we make. I'd also like to commend the officers. I know this is a really challenging issue, and I know that they have been working really hard to come up with a better solution, and I do commend them on that, and it is a legacy issue. So I think there's a genuine desire to work with community and to work to get really great solutions for both development and upgrades that are necessary from a safety perspective and the environment. And I just really want to commend the officers for all the work that you guys are doing to help us get there. So I thank you for what you've done, and I thank you in advance for what we have now committed you to do, to engage further with the community and to understand if there are other ways we can achieve the upgrade of Mullers Road. So thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but I'm also inviting you to leave should you wish. It is quite a lengthy agenda. We're only 2 items in, so yes, Donna. Thank you to and please I acknowledge the planning committee and all the work you do on behalf of us. But we don't expect you to do all the work. We're here to help and work co-design together. So really that community. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so I will now move on to page 83 of our agenda. Item 9.1.3, planning applications received and planning applications determined from 1 November to 30 November 2021. Director Tingay, may I have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Another busy month in the planning department. Throughout the month of November, we received 20 new planning applications. During this time, there were 18 planning permit applications decided upon. This included 2 applications that were withdrawn and 1 planning application that lapsed. There is a recommendation on page 86 of the agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? No? Okay. I've got to say, this is really unusual doing it in person. I'm used to doing it on the screen and looking at your squares, and now I'm so apologies if I seem a little frantic and head spinning. So councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state your motion? Councillor Andrews.
I move that the recommendation on page 86 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dickinson. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. And okay, would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Andrews?
No, thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Dickinson? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, can I see a show of hands? Turn off the microphone. And against? None. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, so moving on to page 96 of our agenda, item 9.2.1, the Domestic Animal Management Plan. Director Ruff, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have within the Shire about 2,000 dogs and 500 cats that we can find. And every 4 years we're required to prepare a plan to identify how we're going to manage our animal management responsibilities. So we developed a draft and also went out to community and consulted and asked what the issues were from the community. And as a result of that, we've come up with the draft domestic animal management plan, and I must apologise it wasn't circulated with the agenda. So I think you've seen it before, but yeah, we just missed it. The 7 focus areas in the plan about authorised officer training, responsible pet ownership, minimising the risk of dog attacks, animal registrations, nuisance dogs and cats, dangerous dogs, and off-leash areas. So there's some actions in relation to each of those within the plan, which we'll be pursuing over the next 4 years. So the plan's there for council to endorse.
Thank you, Director Ruff. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? Yes, Councillor Murray.
Could I ask a question about the community feedback? Could you tell me what were the major sort of items of feedback that needed to be incorporated?
I think the major ones were animals at large, so wandering animals, whether they're dogs or cats. Dog attacks was another concern. So they were probably the 2 major ones.
Thank you, Director Ruff. Any further questions of the officer? Nope. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Councillor Murray.
I move that we adopt the recommendation as listed on page 96 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. And do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Haysbert. Thank you. Is there any opposition to the motion? Okay. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, only briefly, just to say that this is an important area for many people. Dogs and animals, domestic animals, are an important part of their life, and we have a role to play in the management of that. And I commend the officers for their efforts to put this quite detailed plan together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Haysbert.
I'd just like to add that we also heard clearly from the community that the need for more off-leash dog areas in the municipality. So hopefully we can strive towards achieving that for the community. I think this plan generally was a great example of how council engaged with the community in a meaningful way and really involved the community in making this plan, because the community's feedback was captured to really develop this plan over a course of a few months. So I think I'm confident to support it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay. Did you want to write a reply? No. Okay. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour and against, and I declare that carried. Okay, we are now, councillors, I'd like to change the order of business to move item 9.2.2 relating to the Australia Day Awards to the end of the list of officers' reports tonight, as proceedings need to be considered in camera, which confusingly is in confidence. I know there's cameras here, but so we need to do that as confidential business. So just to make it a more streamlined event, can I have a motion to change the order of business to consider? What? Okay. Sorry, you're talking under your breath, Councillor Rayburn.
Sorry, so moved.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Horrigan. And Councillor Horrigan, can I get all those in favour? Yes, and against, none, and that is carried. Thank you, councillors. So we'll now move on to page 179, item 9.2.3, community grant funding round 2 for 2021-22 allocations. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Earlier this financial year, Council ran the first round of the community grants program. As part of that program, there were a number of funds that remained available in the budget. So Council decided to run a second round of the community grants program. This opened on the 1st of October and closed on the 31st of October. Council invited submissions from eligible community groups to apply for funding under the 4 categories, that being active and healthy communities, arts and culture, environment and sustainability, facilities and infrastructure. A total of 6 applications were received, and following the evaluation and assessment process by council officers, it's recommended that council support 4 community projects, and they are listed in the recommendation. Should council support that, there is a remaining funding allocation of $930, and part 2 of the recommendation is that monies be allocated to the small projects grants program that council also runs. So councillors, tonight there is a recommendation on page 179 of the agenda for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions for the officer? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Yes, Councillor Dickinson. You need to put your microphone on, Councillor Dickinson. Thank you.
I'd like to move the motion as set out on page 179.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. And is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think the money is well spread out over 4 different townships and all good, solid community working groups. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thank the community groups for applying for these small grants to improve their offerings for community members.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Reg, would you like a right of reply? Okay. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour and against, and I declare that carried. So we're now moving to item 9.2.4. Action Group Funding Round 2 2021-22 allocations. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Also earlier this financial year, Council opened the Action Group funding allocation. So this is funding that action groups are able to apply for. Through that funding round, we received a number of applications from Greytown, Avenel and Euroa. However, we didn't receive any applications from Strathbogie, Longwood, Ruffey or Ngambie action groups. As part of the resolution that was presented to council, approved by council at the September council meeting, officers worked with those 4 groups to reopen the funding and offer a second round for those groups who didn't apply in the first round. Following the reopening of the funding availability and the funding grant round, we received 1 application for 2 projects from the Longwood Action Group, which is something that they have been working towards. Unfortunately, the other action groups did not apply for any funding at this point in time. should this recommendation be supported tonight, there is also a second dot point as part of the recommendation that endorses officers to continue to work with action groups to utilise the remaining budget allocation, to look at community capacity training opportunities, and also to assist in the preparation of community plans by providing, but not limited to, graphic design. There are a number of community action groups that are in the process of developing their new four-year plans as we speak. So there is a recommendation for Council's consideration tonight on page 189. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the Director? Yes, Councillor Raven.
Director Tingay, I was just clarifying. Greytown, Avenel and Euroa Action Group applied. Strathbogie, Longwood, Ruffy and Nagambie didn't. Town, did they put in one and it wasn't successful, or? I'm just clarifying, that's all.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Please just be patient for one moment. I believe that they were successful in the first round, Mayor Rayburn, and they may have been overlooked in including them in the background. I'm terribly sorry about that.
Just clarification, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further? Yes, Councillor Dickinson.
It's not so much a question but a statement, if I can make that. I think it's a sad state of affairs when there are 4 action groups who haven't applied for funding, and we do often hear about council not supporting organisations enough. Well, this is an opportunity for action groups to apply for money and they've missed out. And I include my own electorate, Nagambie, and I think it's a pretty sad state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state your motion? Councillor Murray.
Can I move that we adopt the recommendation listed on page 189 of the agenda, please?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
Just briefly to, I suppose, to echo in part what Reg has talked about there. Action groups are a sort of a way of which the council can provide the sort of things that communities need. So it gives us a sort of a way into communities and a way to assist those communities to help themselves, to be a bit more sort of independent minded and so on, to look after some of the concerns that they see are as important. So I do think we have an important role to support action groups and to encourage them to participate in the process. And it is disappointing when some communities don't take that opportunity up and perhaps need some sort of assistance to make the most of the opportunities. Longwood has those, so I'm really pleased. They have a very strong community down there, and although they've needed a bit of extra work from officers to get things happening, I'm pleased to see that they've made an application and have a program there for the coming year. And I endorse officers to work with the other action groups to try and get them active again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's satisfying to see that we can give back to our community, and I do share Councillor Dickinson's disappointment, and namely the action groups who didn't put their hand up, and perhaps we need to do some more work as councillors in that area. So that's a good effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Did any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No, I would just like to add we had a really successful evening here earlier. No, it was last week, sorry, muddling my days. Wednesday last week with action groups, and the majority, bar 2, were represented. I understand a lot of them are at the stage of developing their community plan, and perhaps that's a bit of a reflection of why our applications were low. So I'm really excited as to the collaborative work that will come out of the evening that we had here with officers and the ability for the action groups to work together as well across our Shire. I think there's a lot of opportunity and potential on that front. So I think there's great opportunity going forward, is what I'd like to add. So I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And against, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 9.2.5, the Euroa Gathering and Growing Space. Director Tingay, can we have a summary, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The Euroa Community Action Group was successful in securing some money as part of the Pitch My Project initiative through this financial year's budget allocation. They received $10,000 for council. They have been looking for a spot to establish essentially a community garden, but a space that will offer much more than that, an opportunity for people to come together. Following the recommendation and the motion that was passed at the September council meeting, officers have been out to chat with nearby residents and undertake a consultation process. And also officers were asked to bring back a summary of the consultation consultation outcomes to council and also any further recommendations. As part of the submission process, we received 2 objections for the proposed site, which is at 16A Brewery Street in Euroa. Officers met on site to discuss concerns, and there's a detailed response of those concerns raised provided within the council report. Whilst it's acknowledged that not all concerns have been resolved, the Euroa Community Action Group have indicated that they are committed to working with the broader community to ensure that the community gathering and growing space is a welcoming, safe and usable space for all. Following the consultation process, officers also looked with the Euroa Community Action Group in relation to a number of other sites that may have been feasible. However, upon review, it appears that this site is the most appropriate site. There is a recommendation for council's consideration on page 196 of the agenda. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of Director Tingay? Yes, Councillor Raven.
Director Tingay.
Yes.
Clarification, if I may. The name of the group is a typo. Is that a typo area in the fact that it's known as a Euroa Action Group Committee, or is it known as Euroa Community Action Group?
Through you, Mayor Binks, yes. My understanding is that it is known as ECAG, so the Euroa Community Action Group, but that wording may be used interchangeably within the report. I also note, Mayor Binks, that there is perhaps a typo in the recommendation of the street, and I do apologise for that. I've indicated 16A Brock Street.
Yes. It is. Is that correct?
No, it's Brewery Street.
Brewery. Oh, that's a very different street.
That's a very different street.
Wow.
So I do apologise.
Oh, yes, it is 16A Brewery Street. Okay, so, well, we have a recommendation with some need for some amendments before us that have been noted. So we're talking about 16A Brewery Street. For everyone's clarification. Councillors, can I have a motion, and can you state your motion, please? Councillor Haysberg.
I'll support the recommendation on page 196 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder? With the typos.
That's right.
Yes. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Hourigan. So Councillor Haysberg, would you like to speak first, and then Councillor
Thank
Murray?
you.
Sorry, Councillor.
I think in Euroa that we're lucky to have this passionate group of community members who are driving this project to create a gathering space and community garden, and I'm delighted to support the community action group. They're keen to convert a space that currently adds no value whatsoever to the town. It's just some old asphalt that's all crumbled or broken, and it's just a hot sort of yucky space. I think there's so many benefits to having more gathering spaces in a community where we can share knowledge and, in this case, hopefully produce. And I believe that this is a space where multi-generations can gather and engage, and I think that's very important in a small community.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Horrigan?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I'd like to say that I think it's really important that we support, as I said before, action groups and passionate groups within our community who want to take on a project and support the community, especially things like this. I think it's a terrific idea. It's a difficult one to get off the ground sometimes, these ideas, and they're a challenge to make work sometimes. But I think they're worth the effort, and if we can get it happening in Euroa, I think it will be a terrific thing for the community, and particularly for for some people. I think this is a really important step. So I support us encouraging the action group to take this on.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Binks. I agree that the action group has put in a lot of effort in regards to a community garden, and I know that it is a thing for the Euroa community, and they do want it. I am opposing this recommendation as I believe it's not the correct site, and sorry, Councillor Haysbert, but asphalt that's crumbled and broken is not a place for a community garden or for children or for people to be around. And so I can foreshadow that someone's going to trip over, and then who does that fall back on? I am concerned, and I echo all the objectors' concerns, and these objectors are neighbours that live directly and where this community garden is going to impact them. And they've spoken about things like lighting. There is no lighting there. They've spoken about toilets. There is no toilets there. They've spoken about noise. Who is going to police the noise that's coming from there? They've spoken about car parking. Who is going to police the car parking? They've spoken about movement and constant movement. They've spoken about smell. The report itself says that it's not just one garden. If you want to have your own garden there, you're allowed to. Who is going to be looking after this, and who is going to be looking after the neighbours? Perhaps I should have put in an amendment to defer it for the officers to relook at alternative options, but I can see in the report that alternative options have been looked at, and sometimes the officers have said it's not suitable, but also sometimes the CAG, that's better, have said that it's not suitable. I do think in this particular instance as well that there is a clause that will be going in there when we are leasing the space that the community garden could move, and I think that it is very likely that that community garden could be moved, and I think that that would be detrimental and then would cause a problem in itself. And so the only reason I am opposing this particular recommendation is because I'm not satisfied that where the location is in the best interest of our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Did anyone want to speak for the motion from the rest of council? No. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to have your right of reply?
Thanks for your concerns. I think the community group's proposing to have that concrete removed, so I think it will add a lot of value to the space if that happens. And yeah, I don't think you can grow vegetables on that sort of concrete, and won't be a very enticing place. You're right with that broken asphalt, but we've allocated money in the budget for this project to happen, and I think we've committed that to the community group, and that they're happy with this space. So I think the officers have worked really hard to achieve the requests of council in providing this space. And they have worked well in other towns. So I feel like I'm sure it'll work well. in your role with a passionate group driving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. So I will now put the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and against 1. And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, so we're moving on to item 9.2.6, the Regional Tourism Investment Fund Council Contribution. Director Tingay, can we have a summary, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The state government has just recently announced the Regional Tourism Investment Fund, and the purpose of that fund is to support new and innovative tourism infrastructure projects that will increase visitation, drive private investment and deliver jobs. As part of this round of funding, which is due to close on the 14th of January, there are 4 pillars that are relevant to the fund, that being nature, Epicurean, arts and culture, and First Peoples-led experiences. Council officers have reviewed priority projects within the community against the criteria for this funding stream to determine what projects would fit this particular opportunity. It is proposed that council support Go Ngambie in their quest for an application to establish a thoroughbred statue park and walk at Jacobson's Outlook in Ngambie, overlooking Lake Ngambie. Go Ngambie have been working in the background to really detail the vision for this particular project, and are also garnering the support from private investment. There is a recommendation on page 206 for council's consideration, which as part of the recommendation outlines the support that council would provide should Go Ngambie's expression of interest and subsequent application be approved by the state government. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Councillor Dickinson.
I support the motion as stated on page 206.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Potentially this can put not only Ngambie but our Shire on the map. We're always looking for opportunities, and this is one that's staring us in the face. The equine industry in our Shire is a huge employer, and to showcase it in such a way at Lake Ngambie overlooking the lake is pretty spot on, and I've seen an artist's impression of it, and it doesn't impose upon the lake. That was my initial fear, but by looking at it as it's proposed, it actually enhances what's already there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I support what Councillor Dickinson said, and it's nice that to see that Go Ngambie will be the lead organisation in this, and the council will support the outcome of that. So,
thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, item 9.3.1, updated special rate and charge scheme policy. Director Roth. Yeah.
Yes, I'll take that one.
Yeah, thank you. Can we get a summary, please?
Yes, no problem. So the Local Government Act allows council, where there are projects, particularly infrastructure or in some cases services, where there's a specific benefit to ratepayers, then we can recover all or part of the costs of that work, and it needs to be governed by a policy. The projects themselves could be either community or council initiated, and generally we'd require reasonable evidence that there's support, let's say 50 to 60% generally, so we don't go through a whole process and then at the end of the day it doesn't get up. So we need to get some understanding that there's support there. Then what we'd do is we'd calculate an estimate of the cost and then benefit. Now, in some cases, for example, if it was a through road and there was a wider community benefit, council might fund some of that, and then the residents fund the pieces that were more relevant to their property. There's a number of opportunities for feedback to the extent that when we eventually decide to declare a scheme, we need to put out a public notice and give that to the proposed contributors and obtain feedback. And even if once council makes a decision, there's an opportunity for appeal to VCAT. And generally with a project, we would fund it up front, and then the policy talks about how we recoup the money from the residents. Some would pay in full, and there are time periods identified in the policy based on the dollar value of the scheme. So what it also does is spreads our money around. So if we can get some assistance in funding a project, then we can use our money for something that's, hasn't got that capacity. So there's a fairly detailed process to make sure that it is supported, and a fair bit of work goes into it.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer on this matter? Councillor Rayburn.
Just clarification, if I may, Director. This is council assets we're talking about, not assets of any other organisation or like GV Water or GW Water or anything else like that.
No, that'd be council assets.
Thank you, Director Roth. Any further? No clarifications? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Councillor Hourigan.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 212 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there any objection or opposition? Sorry. No. Okay. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Binks. Just thank you to the team on a well put together policy, and really easy to read, especially with the flow charts. It means that any constituent in the community, we have to pick up this policy and understand the exact process on how we come to that decision and how we come to the end. And even for myself, after being questioned on this, I think in December, my first particular month. So thank you to the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the matter?
Only to just say I support what Councillor Hourigan said. As long as you get a flow chart in it, you'll get everything done. Thank you.
We all love a good diagram. I'm a fan of them. You know that, coming from a design background. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? No, I'd just like to thank the staff for doing it. You will notice that the last review was from the 22nd of October 2013, so we're clearly due for the review. And a note that the next review is slated for 2024. And I think the community will see that that's been a really big driver for this council, is to get our policies and strategy really up to date and in line with not only community expectation, but with our requirements under Local Government Act, and to ensure that we are working with current and relevant information and policy that reflects that information. So thank you to Director Roth and your team for doing this work. It's really vital to the running of our council. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. Would anyone like to? No. Can you show your hands, please? All those in favour? Sorry, Sally, are you in favour? Yes. And any against? And I declare that carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving to item 9.3.2, tender for contract number 2021. So the contract number is 20-21 for the 2021 to 2022 predictive modelling software. So sorry for the muddle, it's all the years. And Director Roth, can we get a report on that, please, a summary on the report?
Thank you, Mayor. So currently to inform our budgeting and ensure that we spend the money on particularly roads and bridges, drains as effectively as possible, we have what's called a condition assessment done every few years where we rate every asset between 1 and 10. So 10 has basically had it and 1 is brand new. But there are now more sophisticated models around which will allow us to model our assets on things such as corporate plan fit, risk reduction, environmental impact, community impact. So we've been out to market with proposal to get this more detailed predictive software, and we had 3 tenderers respond, and the recommended product is called Aesthetic, which also integrates with Confirm, which is our other product which holds a lot of our data. The proposal is for the acquisition of the software and a management service that goes with it, and that will allow us to get into it fairly quickly with expertise to actually set ourselves up. So we'll be able to produce some really sophisticated modelling for you to make decisions on where's the best spend for your money in the asset area. So it's a pretty exciting project. And I've inherited the asset department this week from Director Tingo, who's done a lot of the legwork, so, as well as a special charge scheme. So I'll say thank you. But no, we're looking forward to this. It's going to be really good, I think. So.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? No? Okay. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews? You just need your microphone, Councillor Andrews. Thank you.
I move the recommendation on page 247 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there a seconder to the motion, please? Councillor Murray. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, as Director Roth said, I think it's important we keep with the times and keep contemporary with these sorts of things. And this is one of those important projects which allows us to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Murray? No? Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? No? Okay. Councillors, I'll put the item to the vote, to the motion to a vote. Can I get a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? Nope. And I declare that carried. Thank you. So we're now moving to item 9.4.1, review of the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. Director Roth, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So the Audit and Risk Committee has the charter which governs the way it operates, and it gets reviewed periodically. So there are 2 changes from the previous version. One is to identify one of the functions of the committee is to monitor reimbursements of councillor expenses and members of delegated committees. And the other was just to clarify that the membership of the council or membership of the Audit and Risk Committee should be done at each annual statutory meeting of the council. So they're the 2 amendments to the previous charter, and they're for council to endorse.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any clarifying questions for? No? Director? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Councillor Murray.
I move that we adopt the recommendation as listed on page 255 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke, thank you. Is there any opposition? No. Okay, Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only to say that I think, yes, it clarifies the appointment of councillors to that committee, and makes it clear when they start and finish, and it also clarifies some issues about councillor expenditures and how they go towards how they're notified about those expenditures.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hayes-Burke, did you want to speak to the matter? No. Would any other councillor like to speak? Nope. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Thank you. And I against, none, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Oh, I need to turn the page. So item 9.4.2, investment and cash management policy. Director Roth, can we have a summary, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So this policy governs the way we invest our surplus funds until they're needed, and it identifies the types of investments. Also has a larger section than the previous version on ethical and responsible investments, which is a bit of a developing space. So that's an area where we're going to continue to monitor and I think adjust the policy as we go along. The Audit and Risk Committee considered the policy last Friday, and there was a suggestion that on page 5 we talk about a minimum average rate of return to be achieved and benchmark rates and so on, and it was felt that we probably should have a target in there. Now, having looked at it, there is a suggestion that we look for for term deposits and bank bills, the applicable RBA bond index plus 0.1%. And I'd suggest that we maybe review that in 12 months and see how we're going. And also the 11am account, which is just the cash, it's probably the RBA cash rate, less than a month. So we'll just set some targets there, then we'll report on those, and then if we're exceeding them, then we might look to lift the target. But there's also the risk-reward trade-off depending on how we're going. So with those couple of amendments, it's recommended that the policy be endorsed.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? Yes, Councillor Dickinson.
Some time ago, probably 12 months ago, we did talk about ethical investing, and I just wonder if that's been taken into consideration in this proposal.
Yes, it's really, Mayor. Yeah, it's fairly challenging because if we buy a bank bill or a term deposit, we can't really control who the bank then on-lends it to. And I think this will develop more because now you see banks, for example, talking about getting out of coal by 2030. I think the 4 major banks are talking about doing that. And some may develop specific products, but then we'd have to weigh up the risk and the rate that was being offered. Well, I think it's a tricky one at the moment because it's a developing market, I think. But we'll keep monitoring it, and we have got a fair bit of information from the banks that we deal with saying this is what we're doing in the ethical space and environment and things like that. But actually tying that to an actual investment products, the link's not quite there where you can point to it directly and say this is where it's going.
Thank you, Director Roth. Were there any further questions of the Director? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Horrigan.
So I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 272 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there any opposition to this motion? No? Okay. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak? No? Councillor Rayburn? No? Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke?
I'd just like to thank Director Roth for being proactive and monitoring the ethical and environmental investment space. I know you say it's challenging, but councillors appreciate the research that's being done by officers in order to ensure that council investments become more sustainable. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Would any other councillor like to speak? No? Okay, I shall put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, can I see a show of hands? And against? And I declare that carried. Item 9.4.3, the council policy review of the procurement policy. Director Roth, can I have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. So the council is required to review its procurement policy, which has been done, and I guess some of the changes from the previous version is more emphasis or a larger section on social procurement, including working with the Taungurung. Tried to beef up some of the environmental considerations. Probably the major one is the use of panels of suppliers, where we have a two-step process where we can identify suppliers that have the right OH&S and other credentials, and then we pick a panel, and then when we have a specific project they could do, then we go to the members of the panel and seek their response and price being a part of that. One of the recommendations in this policy is that we reduce the weighting for price from 60 down to 50%, which is relatively consistent with other councils in the region. There was, once again, the Audit and Risk Committee reviewed this last Friday, and there was a minor suggested change to one of the tables, which talked about the number of quotes we should seek from the panel, and it previously said this was table 2 on page 302 of the agenda. So it previously said that we would issue a request in writing to a minimum of one panel supplier. So now we've changed that to 2, just to get some competition in there. So other than that, they're the major changes, I think, from the previous version.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions to the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 283 of the agenda with an additional condition. Oh, sorry, additional dot point. And that is to receive a further report in April of 2022 that augments Council's commitment to the climate emergency declaration by strengthening environmental consideration and weightings.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillors, do I have a seconder to Councillor Haysbert's motion? Councillor Murray. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Okay. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'd really like to see this procurement policy augment our commitment to climate change, to the climate change declaration. I believe that through procurement, we have a real opportunity to make more environmentally conscious decisions, and I'd like to show our commitment to the climate emergency declaration through this policy. I believe that we need to send a message to contractors and the community of what our expectations are in light of climate change and reducing waste. For example, we have an opportunity to create a demand and industry for recycled content by mandating a percentage of recycled content be used in all capital works projects. So I look forward to seeing what officers bring back to councils when they've done some research and benchmarking with other councils who perform well in sustainable procurement.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Murray.
Just to say that I think this amendment gives the opportunity for officers to do further work on looking at some of the options that might be able to be presented to us in February, March, so that we can examine other ways that we can strengthen our environmental and climate response.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak? Yes. Did you want to speak? No. You look like you wanted to, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Haysbert, did you want a reply? No. Okay. You do? Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'd, whilst what Councillor Hayes-Burke is saying is admirable, it's already been incorporated in this proposal about environmental sustainability, and I just think we've got to be a little bit careful we don't get too far ahead of ourselves in that regard. We're certainly doing everything we can to ensure we are being very responsible environmentally and presenting a positive outlook to the community, but I just feel we need to caution ourselves a little bit that we don't go too far.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. My understanding of Councillor Hayes-Burke's additional point is to seek further information. So we're not adding to the policy at this stage. We're just getting an additional report as to what options are available in the future. So we won't. It's not changing the procurement policy at this stage. It's just adding an additional point to the recommendation. That we have some further information as to what options might be available to us in the future.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I look forward to receiving that information and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do you want to respond? No? Okay. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote and I see a show of hands for all those in favour. And against, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. And so the next item is 9.5.1, of which I have a material conflict of interest in. So, councillors, I will vacate the chair and hand the chair to Deputy Mayor Councillor Paul Murray. Thank you.
We're just waiting for the doors to close. There you go. There they go. All right, so we're dealing with the councillor item 9.5.1, councillor conference and training expense request on page 309. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, in front of us tonight, in our council expenses policy, you are all allocated $1,500 per financial year to undertake training. You do have the ability under that policy to request further funds, subject to a council resolution. So the report that you have in front of you today is a request from Mayor Binks to participate in the Rainbow Local Government Conference in February at St Kilda Town Hall. And that includes some accommodation, some meals, allowances, and also some parking. So Councillor Binks has submitted the required form, and in terms of the reason why she wants to attend the training is to gain a deeper understanding of meaningful approaches and practices that foster an inclusive and nurturing community. So councillors, in front of you, you have a recommendation on page 309 that notes that Councillor Binks has already exhausted the $1,500 training that's towards her mastery of business empathy that she gave a report on earlier this evening, to endorse a further $559.35 towards the conference fees, accommodation, etc., and to also receive a written report that's required under the council expenses policy once the Mayor has completed that training, similar to those reports that we received tonight. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any other questions of the officer? None? One question, Councillor Horrigan.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Dawn, you may need to take this one on notice. Have you got a figure on how much has been spent in the training and development thus far this financial year?
Through you, not off the top of my head, but we have certainly a significant allocation for training, given the fact that we are still basically inducting councillors, and we also have a new council that's been recently elected to induct. So there's more than sufficient funds in the current budget. So we're not asking for an additional budget allocation. There's certainly sufficient funds. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillors, can I have a motion, please, that and state what your motion is? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 309 of the agenda, please.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Haysberg. Would you like to speak to the motion? Would you, sorry, Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Please, Deputy Mayor. I don't think it's of any surprise that I am very much pro of training, and I noticed that tonight Peter Davey also made a comment regarding the training for councillors and for mayors. And I don't believe that I have a right to decide what sort of training that a councillor should go to a certain extent. And considering this particular course and the other course that Mayor Binks has enrolled in directly relates to leadership and it directly relates to the councillor role, I believe that we should be supportive of everyone receiving training. And just to point it out there, as everyone knows, that we have a municipal monitor to come and help us because we lacked the training. And so this is extremely important that we support all councillors when they're trying to better themselves, to grow, and in this particular course, from what I can read, have a better understanding of all different members of our community. Thank you.
Does the seconder wish to speak?
I also would like to support Mayor Binks because I believe she's showing her true commitment to learning to be the best mayor that she can be for her diverse constituency. And I'd like to see her supported in that endeavour. I think the more we can foster a Shire that's inclusive and accepting, the safer place this is for all. As Executive Director Bray said, there is a training allocation and a budget allocation for training for councillors if they wish to access it, and I would encourage all councillors to access money for training should they wish to. It's definitely in the best interests of the municipality and this organisation. And admittedly, we do very little in the LGBTQIA+ space, and I think this is one way we can demonstrate our commitment to doing more.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Councillor Reg Dickinson.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be criticised by sections of the community for opposing this motion, but they'd be misguided if and when they do. I'm only opposing it on the basis of, not for what it is, but that Councillor Binks has expended $1,500 of her allocated allowance, and I think that's as far as it should go.
Does anyone wish to speak in favour of the motion? Does the mover wish to their right of reply?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do I get the right of reply at the end? Does anyone else want to speak to opposing it before I go?
Is there a speaker against the motion? We know you don't get one, Tom. Would the mover like their right of reply now?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, I said about the municipal monitor being here due to a lack of training. I didn't mean just training. I meant as a whole here to help guide us in a better direction. So pardon that word of training. That wasn't supposed to be in there.
All right, I'll call for a vote on this motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray, for chairing the meeting whilst I had to step out. We'll now move on to item 9.5.2, the draft complaints policy. Director Bray, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillors, tonight we have one of the never-ending requirements under the Local Government Act 2020, but I think it's a really important requirement, and I'm also a bit sorry to say that we actually hadn't had a formal complaints policy in place until now. So the complaints policy, or the draft that's in front of you tonight, complies with all of the requirements of the Local Government Act in terms of setting out the processes for dealing with complaints, reviewing the complaints, and also an internal review if people are not satisfied with the response they get. And it also talks about, defines, I suppose, returning complaints, or where people keep complaining about the same thing and they are unhappy with our responses. And that does happen from time to time, and it is quite exhausting in terms of council's resources, and redirects our workload from other work as well. So it outlines, there is a flowchart in this policy to give people a bit of a visual connection and visual cue to the process. But it really does, although we haven't had a formal complaints policy in place, it does really reflect what we've been doing in terms of internal review from people that aren't involved in any decision or in the service that is being complained about, or the behavioural. So we do have that one step removed. So there is independence when we're looking at complaints. So we're also going to create a complaints register just to formalise it. We know we get a few complaints, but they're not actually, when we're actually asked by government agencies how many complaints we've received, we don't collate them in the one place. And so this will actually help us have a bit more data and a bit more information, and report back to authorities like the Audit and Risk Committee as well, in terms of how we're doing and how many complaints we're getting. So importantly also, the Mutual Respect Charter is reflected in this complaints policy. We just ask that people, when making a complaint, aren't personal about it, and show that due respect to councillors and council staff. So councillors, we do have some reporting mechanisms where we review the policy, and we also provide monitoring to council and the Audit and Risk Committee. In front of you on page 317 is a recommendation that you adopt the policy and that we provide quarterly reports to the Audit and Risk Committee on the complaints register. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer regarding this report? No? Oh, yes, Councillor Rayburn.
Just one thing, if I may, through you, Mayor, to the Executive Manager. A regular person who complains to council, how far under this new draft complaints register or policy do we stop? If we've got a repetitive person who keeps coming back to us week after week after week, where do we stop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's an interesting comment, and I also was remiss to say that we base the policy on the recommendations from the Victorian Ombudsman. She's actually done quite a few investigations in terms of complaints, and also it says quite legitimately that you can receive unreasonable complaints. And so in section 11, it talks about unreasonable conduct and complaints. To answer your question, Councillor, it really is a case-by-case basis. So from experience, we do have complainants that raise similar issues over and over again, and we do answer them. We certainly answer any new questions that we have. But there is also a point where we say, look, we cannot provide any further information or clarification. And so if you're unhappy with our response, you can go through other external agencies such as the Ombudsman or the Inspectorate or whatever other agency is relevant to that complaint. So there will become a point where we just can't answer anymore, and we will respectfully just respond to that saying we've already answered those questions and can't provide any further information, and again remind them that they can go to another agency if they're not satisfied with that response.
Yeah, I think Director Bray is implying that unfortunately there's no hard and fast black and white rule on this matter. It definitely is a grey area, and it is a case-by-case scenario. So, yeah, thank you.
Through you, Mayor, I might just add, because I obviously haven't satisfied the councillor in my response. Legally, we can't deny service or a response, and so we do need to respond under our customer service charter to the correspondence that we receive, and so we do need to provide a response even though it's a returning complaint. So we cannot deny that sort of service to a customer.
Thank you. Did you have a response, Chris?
Yeah, I'm not being pedantic here, but I'm just, at times I think we've got to protect our staff, and the certain members of our community are persistent and they put undue pressure on our staff to keep responding to the same issue all the time. Is there a point where we can just say no response is the only response so that we can allow our staff to go on and do more productive work for our community across the board?
Through you, Mayor, again, it's a case-by-case basis. I think what we have done certainly over the last couple of years is that if there are persistent complaints of a similar nature, it will actually be elevated to the executive, and so that's to reduce the stress and the burden on officers at other levels of the organisation, and to just reflect the fact that yes, we are escalating it, but that there is nothing that we can add. And so, again, I don't think we can not respond to people, but it might just be a brief response saying there is nothing further to add. Under our complaints policy, we refer you to the Ombudsman or another agency. So I think and certainly we benchmarked it against the Ombudsman's sort of advice and also other councils' policies. And so we're not doing anything that's inconsistent. It's just getting that balance between us being respectful as an organisation as well as requiring other people to be respectful. But you might see under Section 11, we have a zero tolerance policy towards harm, abuse, threats, and unruly behaviour, I suppose, towards our staff and contractors and councillors. And so if someone is displaying behaviour that breaches that charter, then that's when, again, the executive will step in and also, if we need to, take some legal advice on further action. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn and Chris. It is a grey area, a really grey area, and you're probably in a bit of a bind yourself over it, but I also support Chris's comments. How far do you take it, and who should be making the decision? Should it just rest with the CEO, or should it come before council for proper and open discussion? Because there are circumstances that need to be discussed, and I'm glad that you added councillors there in your last point, because it does happen not just with members of the public or officers, but also with councillors. But I would think that these situations cannot be allowed to continue. They involve time, and time is money. And when it's the CEO who has the ultimate responsibility for this kind of situation, I don't think that we should be. I think we should be supportive of the CEO, but asking the CEO to bring it before council for discussion.
Through
Can I make a point of order? Are we asking questions here, or are we debating something?
through the Mayor, I'm taking that as a question. If the Mayor agrees that it's a question.
I thought we were in a question space.
So through you, Mayor, in terms of bringing it to council, I suppose what I would say is that I do have concerns on that around privacy, because complaints can be directed towards a staff member or be directed towards personal issues. So we would have to be careful in terms of what we report to council, unless it's done in camera. And I suppose in terms of complaints, it's really an operational matter. And that's why if there are repeated complaints and behaviour of concern to us through those complaints, that's why it's escalated to the executive and also to the chief executive officer. So in terms of, unless it's relating to a councillor per se, council really doesn't have, I suppose, any jurisdiction because it's more of an operational matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Even where it involves a councillor, it's an operational procedure.
Did you want to?
No, through the Mayor, yes, I did sort of just clarify that if it related to a councillor, then that might be a different matter. But again, it must be a case-by-case basis, and we must look at the issue and also the privacy concerns as well. So yes, it's got to be case-by-case. Thank you.
Yes, Municipal Monitor, would you like to add something?
Sorry to intervene, but Mayor, there is a fundamental question of natural justice to both the complainant and any reviewer. So that's why it's an administrative matter. In the event of being absolutely unable to resolve it, I'm not sure if there's any further body that the council could complain to about a vexatious complainant. I mean, that's further, that's another part of it all, but natural justice is the fundamental principle, and natural justice means you can't prejudge, you must keep an open mind, and these things can't really be put into neat boxes because it deals with people.
Thank you, Municipal Monitor. I don't think, no. Okay. All right. So are there any further questions or are we clarifying? Okay. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move as recommended on page 317 that council adopt the draft complaints policy and also seek officers to prepare a quarterly report regarding the complaints register for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hourigan. Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Is there any opposition to the motion? Sorry. No? Okay. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rayburn?
Thank you, Mayor. This is something which I really am very, very glad to see come to fruition. As Mayor, I've seen a lot of people complaining about how we as a council operate and they speak in tones of no respect, no respect for the positions of councillors or officers of council. And I find this is a way we can report to the Ombudsman and to every other person within our community how many complaints we do and how quickly we resolve them and how we can dignifiedly look after ourselves. And this is one thing I think is really required, because when people speak to you in a way that it's not required because of where you sit in this world, I think that's just vicious people. So I can really commend the executive manager and the executive putting this draft recommendation forward.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the matter?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mayor Binks. That's a lot of questions for you, Dawn Bray, I thought. I think what you'll find is, and I think Dawn said it straight away, is that the Strathbogie Shire has never had a complaints policy before. And whilst we make jokes about flowcharts and how I like flowcharts exciting, it's because it's the same as the policy. It actually provides understanding and a direction. And it's not just understanding and direction for the people who are making complaints or the community, but it's also understanding and direction for the first contacts that receive a complaint and a resolution. Now, I'm not saying it's all rainbows and lollipops, but I do believe that this may help consistent complaints that might come in by the same person, because perhaps now we'll be able to give them the actual policy and they'll be on the same page about where they can go. And it is quite easy for anyone to read. So I think this is a really good step, this policy, and I do hope to come together in 12 months' time to see how it's worked for yourself and for all the officers that take the complaints, as well as the community. I'd like to see some feedback on how they're finding the policy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Murray?
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of things about this. It's an issue, I think, which is which as a new councillor, I didn't realise how much of an issue it was. But I also like to, how much of a problem it can become. But I'd also like to say that complaints, we wouldn't always look at them negatively, all the time. And I think there is an opportunity there that we can improve, and we can maybe look at some of our procedures and processes and take some of those things on board. So I'd hate to get into a sort of thing where we don't look at every complaint and say it's a problem or it's a negative thing. I'd like us to be positive where we can be about that, and it's a way that we can improve and be more accountable, transparent, and supportive of our community. I think it's easy to fall into the sort of the process of sort of thinking it as all being terrible and all being negative, but it's not, I don't think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the matter? No? Councillor Rayburn, did you want to apply? You happy? Okay, councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, item 9.5.3, the monthly performance report. Director Bray, can we have a summary, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we have a range of information and graphs in front of you in the report as usual. I suppose just a couple of things to highlight is the one thing that stood out at me was the $9.6 million in building activity that we've actually had across the Shire in this month, which seems quite extraordinary. And it is distributed between three main wards. And in terms of customer requests, we're still focusing obviously on responding to those as quickly as we can. And in terms of waste, we're still seeing some pretty good records in terms of diversion rates. And I think we've just hit a record for November as well in terms of diversion from landfills. So I think that's something positive to end on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? No? Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Yes, Councillor Rayburn.
I move that on page 333, I think it's 333, the monthly performance review be received and adopted. Noted, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to say one thing. The Municipal Monitor made a comment today that it was great to have these reports available to the community to see how we are performing as a council. So if an outside person who's been dealing in local government for years that sees this report as a benefit to our community, it's great for us as councillors and as officers, even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hands, and against, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. So now we're to item 9.6.1 of the agenda. We're getting there. Strathbogie Shire Council Annual Report for 2020-2021. CEO Salomon, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to provide the community with a copy of our annual report for 2020 to 2021. The annual report is a requirement under the Local Government Act that we do prepare this report annually and provide a copy to the Local Government Minister. The report really does highlight the achievements of council over the past 12 months, and I think of particular note this year is the actions and activity that has undergone in terms of the disruptions caused through COVID, and there has been a lot of response by this council to support our community in trying to overcome the challenges of the pandemic. Plus also it highlights how as a staff we have also continued to provide service despite having to work from home at times and also to have to work for the office. But I think it's some of the other benefits of what the year has brought is really has seen most of our staff being able to have the IT support and equipment to be able to work from home and anywhere, and that's been able to ensure that we provide continual service to our community despite what the challenges we also face. So some of the key highlights also is, I think, of worth noting, councillors and the community, is that some of those initiatives were the Strathbogie story, where we actually asked our community to really give us stories about who they are and what's important to them, and they are still available on our website. We also had incredible success with one of the early councils to sign up to the Working for Victoria, and that really gave us some capacity to do some really much needed work, not only outdoors, but also to actually progress some of that really important foundational policy work. We've also supported local businesses not only through some initiatives funded by the state government, but also for council, where they provided $30,000 to each of the 2 chambers of commerce to help provide free membership to all of our businesses and become connected with those chambers. And we also saw an improvement in our community satisfaction results, something that we're all really proud of. And we know that we still need to do a lot more work in this space, but it's the highest that we have been since the inception of that survey. And we know we will continue to strive to do better. And a couple more areas I'd like to highlight is that for last year that we delivered 84% of our capital works program, which was a truly outstanding achievement given the performance that we did the year before. So I think that despite, again, the challenges of COVID, we were able to really deliver for our community. And one of those ones that I know many of you heard was the off-leash park in Euroa. That has been a really huge success. We've also advocated very, very strongly on behalf of our community over the past year, advocating for issues that really matter to them. So whether it's the ARTC, digital connectivity, which the Mayor Rayburn really strongly advocated for. We achieved funding for some of our key projects. And I think we really did demonstrate that we continually advocate and deliver for our community. And on a final note, I think one of the other things that we've mentioned many times tonight with the councillors is that we were the 100th council in Australia to declare a climate emergency. So there is a recommendation for councillors on page 351 of the agenda for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors, do you have any questions of the CEO regarding this report? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I recommend that Council note the Strathbogie Shire Council Annual Report for 2021 for the year ending 30 June and attached to this report the financial statement and performance statement as certified by our Auditor General.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke, thank you. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd love to, except the CEO has taken all my thunder. Well, that's first and foremost, I'd first like to congratulate the councillors around the table for being able to bring our vision for our community out to fruition. And what a year it has been for us as a council, as a community, and for officers. The sharing of Strathbogie story, as the CEO said, I was a bit iffy at the start, but as always, our engagement and community, what's your job? Basically changed the world with that. I thought it was a great way of putting us out there, and a lot of people were absolutely impressed with the community, Strathbogie story. Working for Victoria was a great success for us as a Shire. In one way, we got everything done. We cleaned our buildings, cleaned our streets, but by God, we're getting a bit of toe now. Because people are saying, why aren't you doing the same job? And I said, we haven't got working for Victoria. But the real issue is it's about what we as a council have done for our community. Because as someone said today to me, that the community pays our wages, pays our what we do, and gives us the sight of where to go and how to do it. And without that community behind us, we wouldn't have been able to deliver a lot of this. But in saying that, without the staff of Strathbogie Shire, for us as councillors, none of this would have happened. So I appreciate and thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Murray.
I'd just like to say to recommend this annual report to our ratepayers. It hasn't been easy. It's been a difficult year in many ways, but it's easy to forget the successes that I think we've had, and it's great to be reminded of all of those here in this document. So I commend the document to all our ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Yes, Councillor Dickerson.
Just a question, will this be available in hard copy?
Through you, Mayor, certainly we can provide some hard copies at the service centres and also on request because we don't want to print off too many. Thank you.
And it will be also be made available on our website. But yeah, we could, if you request to our staff, put in a request, they'll be able to print a copy. So, okay. Yes, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I'd just like to comment or congratulate the officers and the CEO, obviously, on the community satisfaction survey. So thank you for increasing that. That's very important. So I'm looking forward to what the next one's going to be. But I'm very, very confident that that's going to keep improving. And congratulations to the one employee who celebrated 40 years of service with the Shire. And I don't know who that is. I better not offend anyone. And the other person for 30 years of service. So I did read that in the report, and I think that's a magnificent achievement. So well done. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Thank you, Councillor Horrigan, and thank you, everyone. I too would like to pass on my congratulations to CEO Julie Solomon for it and a really fabulous year. And just earlier today, we were talking about remembering our successes. Our meetings can be full of really difficult decisions and really challenging decisions we need to make, but having a moment to reflect on what we have achieved, both within the organisation in terms of our incredible overhaul and a governance and policy face, and catching up with the 2020 Local Government Act, but then also what we are able to deliver out into the community. So there's an incredible amount of work that has gone into achieving all that we have, and it is easy to forget that when you have some really big and challenging current issues in front of you like we do right now, and we continue to do, and it is the role of local government. I think we're all becoming to sort of see that and accept that these challenges don't go away when we win, but it's nice to reflect and be reminded of the success and the good work that we have done and continue to do for the Shire of Strathbogie. So, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a raise of hands? All those in favour, please. And against, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. So I believe we will now, we'll go through notices of motion. CEO Solomon, are there any notices of motion? It's coming.
There are no notices of motion, Mayor, for tonight.
Notices of rescission?
No notices of decision, Mayor.
Urgent business?
There is, there's no items of urgent business. And thank you.
Finally, confidential business. Councillors, got to go through all the items on our agenda. We need to move in camera to consider item 9.2.2, the 2022 Australia Day Awards determination of Shire-wide award recipients. Councillors, can I have a motion to please close the meeting to the public under Section 3F and 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, given the item relates to personal information? Councillor Rayburn, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Dickinson, thank you. Any opposition? No. And although you don't need to speak to the motion. No. Thank you. All those in favour, can I see a show of hands? And against? None. And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. And I'm sorry, Tom, but we'll have to ask you to leave the meeting whilst we consider this. We'll just come back to close the meeting. So there's okay. Yes. Catherine, can I confirm with you